Hi, I'm Lee from Outback Fencing. Today we're going to talk about Australian fencing standards. When you buy a new home or an existing home, you probably need to install a new fence sometime down the track. And knowing which height you can go and what type of fence that you need for your area, you really need to know what you're allowed to do. You don't want to go build a fence, let's say at 2.4 metres high, and before you know it, the local council or your neighbour puts in a dispute and you have to pull the whole thing down, and you're wasting money and time and resources, and you also get bad reputation with your neighbours, which is, if you're living next to neighbours, you really don't want that. So before calling your local tradesman, it's probably best to ring your local council. Even have a look around the area and you'll see fences that are installed, and you sort of get a bit of an idea of what's sort of allowed for your area. It can be a bit tricky sometimes, so to make it easier, we've also written a blog on this on our website, outbackfencing.com.au. And before you start planning your new fence, you probably want to have a read through that, and we've provided some government links so you can do a bit of research on your own and to make sure you know exactly what you're up against, and it's smooth sailing, so to speak. So Australian standards, why do we need them? Sometimes it can seem like the government's got its finger on everything, and you just think, oh my goodness, can't I just do whatever I want in my own backyard? While it is annoying, for instance, if your neighbour put in a huge 3 metre high monstrosity of a fence on your boundary or next to your boundary, it's probably not engineered. In the next wind, it's probably going to blow over, cause some huge amount of damage, probably blocks out the sunlight, and it looks ugly. So these Australian standards, in a way, they actually make the neighbourhood look nicer. And dare I say it, their laws are quite useful. So dividing fences between neighbours, I've done fencing for a very long time, and well, not that long, I'm still middle-aged. Doing the dividing fences between you and your neighbour, and it can cause a lot of strife and confusion or disputes because of how high you want to go and who's going to pay what and all of that kind of stuff. We're going to help you out with that. So in terms of fence height, that's mainly what this video is going to be about. In New South Wales, a good rule of thumb is that the boundary fence in New South Wales shouldn't be any more than 1.8 high. If it is above 1.8 high, you'll need to get council approval or a building permit, which is fine. In some instances, they'll allow you to build a fence up to 2.1 if you have a building permit, and just put in your planning and things like that. And there's also, there'll be setbacks, how high you can have your fence out the front of your property. Some of them won't allow anything higher than 1.2 metres out the front of your property. Some good diagrams on our website on the blog. But if you really want to know any more information, you're best to go to New South Wales Planning Portal. Look that up on Google. If you live in Victoria, you can go up to a height of 2 metres. Again, it's always best to chat to your neighbour about what heights you want to agree on. And again, look up, it's best just to call the local council before you build a fence, really, to know exactly where you stand before you call a fencing contractor to install your fence, or if you're going to do it yourself, which we hope you do, and buy our products, obviously. If you are in Victoria, the website you want to find is the Victorian Fences Act 1968. Go there and you'll find more information about that. To be honest, it's easy just to call your local council, really. In Queensland, look up the Neighbourhood Disputes Resolution Act in 2011. Getting a building permit for a fence between you and your neighbour is usually not needed if your fence is not a swimming pool fence, not a retaining wall, and it's less than 2 metres high. again, just check with your local council on that. In the ACT, building a fence is pretty tight in those areas, so there's a lot of laws, so you really want to just speak to your council straight up. Again, speaking to someone, if you're going to get your fence installed by a fencing contractor, they'll know all the rules and things like that, but it's nothing to be afraid about. Just ring your local council, quite easy, especially when you're doing it yourself. In South Australia, you can go up to 2.1 metres high without council approval. Again, if you live on a corner block, those rules change. Fences made out of brick need a permit if they're over 1 metre. There's also laws in place with things like brush fencing and things like that, and how much you can have out the front, because they're a bit of a fire hazard in some areas. Western Australia is a funny one. Regulations depend pretty much depending on what suburb you're in, so again, just ring the local council. You don't really need to say, listen to me too much more, really. Just ring your local council and you'll find exactly what you need. As you can see, there's there's some things to think about before buying and installing a new fence. Just like any kind of building work, first point of call should be your local council, and just see what you can build on your boundary, what you need to do in terms of how high you can go. There's also forms on there about fences in the law. When you go onto these websites, they'll tell you how to approach your neighbour, and how to dispute who's going to pay half, and you can put a form to send to your neighbour, things like that, to get the ball rolling. Especially if the fence is falling over, your neighbour can be liable to pay half if it's in a really decrepit state. Hopefully it doesn't get to that stage. Hopefully you've got nice neighbours and they agree to pay you half for the fence. Alright, well, thanks for your time, and I hope that we've helped you out there, and good luck, and talk to you soon.